Well, good morning, Foundry. How's everybody doing this morning? All right. Good enough. It's good to know roughly where we're at as a room this morning. So, and if you're joining us online, really glad to be together. It's one of the incredible privileges of our age that we can come together as a church, bodily in this room, and then also through technology. And so really grateful to be with you. My name's Josh Burnett. I'm one of the members of the Foundry leadership team, and it's a privilege for me to be able to join this morning and get to speak. We're going to continue our series, Honest Advent, this morning, so I'm just going to jump right in. I want you to do me a favor. Would you stop for a moment and think about a time in your life when you really anticipated something? And let's stick to good feelings, all right? Not anticipating the bad stuff. When you were super excited about something in your life, and you can distinctly remember. And maybe this is last week. Maybe this is from when you were a kid. Maybe you are a kid, and so you only have last week. And so let's just think about something that you really anticipated. A moment when you were extremely excited about something coming, and maybe you laid in bed at night awake just thinking about it. For me, I can remember Christmas when I was 8 years old, and anticipating the coming of Christmas when I was 8 years old like crazy. Just so incredibly excited for it, so nervous about it. I was really hoping for this one gift, and maybe some of you are. This is dating myself a little bit, but it was the year that Sega Genesis came out, and Sega Genesis was after NES or after the original Nintendo came out, Sega Genesis was the next big thing, and I was so excited. One of my friends had Sonic the Hedgehog, and I had played it at his house, and I was just these graphics are unreal. Can I believe how incredible this game is? I was Mom, Dad, you've got to get me Sega Genesis. Sonic is just it's the most amazing game ever. And I just remember being so incredibly excited about Christmas coming. And Advent, this series that we're in called Honest Advent, we're celebrating, as the church has for some 2,000 years, the coming of Jesus. That's what Advent means. It means coming or anticipation, longing. And when we talk about longing for Jesus, I think it's one of those things that can sometimes be a little abstract, and it's something that happened in the past. So it's kind of weird, right, to long for something that's already come, but it's a good practice for us. And I remember when I was 8 years old, just this wild anticipation for a month, waiting for what I hoped was going to be Sega Genesis. I didn't think it was going to happen, actually. I was man, God, please. And I woke up on Christmas morning. And it was snowing. And so I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. It very rarely snows in December in Louisville, and by the way, that's Louisville if you're not from there. That's the word I'm saying is Louisville, Kentucky. And so I woke up, and I remember looking out the window and seeing snow falling and thinking one of two things: either I'm still asleep and this is a dream, or my parents are playing a prank on me. There's no way it's snowing. And I'd always wanted a white Christmas. It's the only one that's ever happened in my 38 years of life. And so I ran to the window. It's snowing. There's snow on the ground. It's 8 inches of snow already. And I was just it is a Christmas miracle. And I thought to myself, perhaps it's going to happen. Perhaps I'm going to get Sega. So then my parents do this really evil thing that I have continued on in my parenting. They're both here this morning, but they already know this, so it's cool. I've continued on this tradition. They would make us sit on the edge of the steps so that we couldn't see what we had gotten, and they would go make coffee, and I don't even know what. They would mess around and be oh, we have to make sure that everything's perfect down here. For an hour and a half, we'd be sitting on the steps please let us come down and get our presents. And I remember finally they let us come down, and I ran around the corner, and I could see a box that was Sega Genesis sized box, and I tore into it, and sure enough, it was a Sega Genesis, and it was the most incredible moment. It's snowing outside. It's this is the epitome of all Christmas can ever possibly be, right? It's like the complete fulfillment of Christmas. And I was so excited. And then something happened a few minutes later that I would remember this Christmas no matter what, but I will never forget this Christmas because of what happened next. My mom was opening a Cabbage Patch doll. I know that because it was my sister's fault that she was opening this Cabbage Patch doll because she wanted a Cabbage Patch doll for Christmas. And she had a knife, and the knife slipped on a tie, one of those zip ties, and it sunk into her thumb, very, very deeply, cut into her thumb. And I remember hearing my mom scream, grab her thumb, and run into the kitchen. And by the time I got around to see what in the world was going on, she was on her knees in the kitchen with blood dripping out, onto the floor. And I'm really not good with blood, so I just kind of almost fainted and like sat down and got away from seeing it. But I can remember seeing this worried look on her face, this look of panic. And my dad ran in there quickly, and she was like, "We have to go to the hospital." And so my parents are going to set out to go to the hospital. My grandma was with us, so luckily my siblings and I, we stayed at home with my grandma, but they had this car that was really, really bad in the snow, and it took my dad probably 30 minutes just to get it out of the driveway because we had a little tiny incline, and so he finally gets it out, and they take off, and they're gone for what seems like days, right? It just seems like they are gone forever. This is pre-cell phone, right? So kids, there wasn't always phones that you carried around in your pockets. I don't know if you know this or not, but at one point in life, the way that you communicated via phone was you went to a wall, and there was a phone attached to a wall with a cord on it, and you had to dial the numbers, and anyhow, it's this whole thing. At any rate, they are gone. We don't hear from them, and they're gone forever. They're just gone for almost the whole day. It's Christmas, so the roads aren't plowed. And we are at home left to wonder what in the world has happened. What, are they alive? I'm, as an 8-year-old, I'm like, did my mom bleed to death? Is that what happened? Is she dead? Is my dad dead? Are they, where are they? And finally, they come back home covered in snow because they had, in fact, on the way home, gotten the car stuck and had to walk about a mile back through the snow. And so they come in just freezing cold. My mom's got a huge bandage on her thumb. But they were home. And I remember meeting them at the door and hugging them at the door and being so, so incredibly grateful that my parents were alive. And for me, that day, Christmas changed. It changed from longing for things to longing for people. And it was this moment where I realized that the love that I shared between my parents and I, the relationship that I had with my parents was so much more valuable than anything that I could have been given. I still played a lot of Sega Genesis later that day. But in that moment, I had this realization of the people that I was present with that day were so much more important than anything that I could have ever been given. And when we celebrate Christmas, what we're celebrating is that the God of the universe incarnated himself and moved into our neighborhood to be with us so that we could know just how much he loved us. We celebrate the embodiment of love coming for us and coming to us. And while that can sound, kind of pithy and ethereal, what I want to do today is just explore 3 ways that we can actually be changed and shaped by the coming of Jesus for us some 2,000 years ago. So the first way that I want to explore is this, that the coming of Jesus can change our outlook. In a chapter where he is talking about the incarnation or the bodily coming of Jesus, the Apostle John says this in 1 John 4:18. He says, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love." And for me, and I don't know, maybe for you as well, but for me, this idea that love could cast out all fear or drive out all fear is really, really attractive. Because there's a lot to be afraid of right now, isn't there? I mean, I don't know about you, but in the last 2.5 years, I think that the fear threshold on planet Earth for humans has just skyrocketed and gone through the roof. There's this constant conversation about the volatility of our health, the volatility of the economy, the volatility of our jobs. I mean, everything seems to be in constant flux for everyone globally, not just here in Baltimore, but across the country and around the world. And, now we've got this fun little variant that we're talking about and what's going to happen, and it seems like everything on the news is just one fear after another. But the idea that perfect love casts out fear sounds really, really attractive to me. And the question is, how does that happen? What exactly does that look like? How can perfect love cast out fear? And it's not necessarily because the things that we're afraid of aren't present anymore. When Jesus came into the world 2,000 years ago, the fears of Mary and Joseph and the fears of the Jewish people in that area or even across the globe weren't necessarily dramatically changed in that moment because love had come into the world. The circumstances didn't change, but the opportunity to experience God's love did. When I was 12 years old, I'm telling a lot of when I was younger stories today. I'm not sure why. I was thinking about this backstage before I walked out. I was like, these are 2 back-to-back when I was young stories. Anyhow, when I was 12 years old, I went to Montana to do a service trip with my dad and some other people. And one night, we were on this ranch, and a grizzly bear had killed a horse on the ranch that day. And so one night, or that night, my dad and I were kind of hanging out and just talking, and a friend of ours who came on the trip with us, Adam, was like, hey, let's go find that grizzly bear. And I was 12 years old, so I was like, sure, that sounds like a great idea, let's do it. And my dad was like, okay. So it's 9:30, 10 at night, I don't know. It's late, it's dark, it's pitch black outside. There's just a little bit of a moon, and we take off like into the wilderness. We just walk up this mountain where the horse had been killed in this huge pasture that you can't see the other side of it, so big it. And we go up on this mountain ridge, and we're walking around, we're looking for the bear, and all of a sudden we start finding all these rocks that are flipped over, and that's a sign that a bear has been around looking for grubs. And so we're following this trail, and we're like, well, it's probably 11 o'clock. Let's go, let's turn around, let's go back home. It's going to take a while to get there. And so we go back, but we take a different route back, and we have to go down this hillside, and this trail that we're on leads to this pretty big grove of trees, almost forest-sized grove of trees, and it is just absolutely pitch black in there. And by this time, we have seen lots of bear sign, as they call it, and so there's scat, which if you don't know what that is, you can Google it, and there's claw marks on trees and stuff. And as we approach this area where we cannot see anything inside of it, and by the way, I think we had one little tiny flashlight. This is pre-LED lights, so it's not helping that much. And we start hearing these noises inside of this little forest area. And and if you know anything about grizzly bears, you know that one thing that they are is they're noisy. If you can't sneak up on them if they're doing anything. Unless they're asleep, you're going to hear them. They're really noisy. And so we hear what sounds like a grizzly bear in these woods. And I remember just thinking, this is crazy. What are we doing out? How did I get talked into this? My 12-year-old brain was starting to be maybe this wasn't such a hot idea. And then our friend Adam, who was with us, pulls out his gun and has his flashlight out. And all of a sudden I realized, no, we're good. We're golden. And here's why. Adam was a member of the SWAT team, and he had been in the military, and for some crazy reason, he was not afraid at all, or at least he was doing a great job of convincing my dad and I that he was not afraid. And so my thought very quickly changed from fear to okay, let's go do this. Let's go see if we can find this grizzly bear in these woods. Not because I thought, I could do anything if a grizzly bear took off after us, but because I thought, Adam's probably going to step in the way and, take the fall. Like, if he doesn't kill the bear, at least I can get far enough away while the bear is killing him that I'll be just fine, right? And I remember having this moment of realization of no, Adam's going to fight the bear. Like, if a bear comes, he's the guy, and my dad and I will probably live. I think I could outrun my dad if it comes to it, so at least I'll live, He'd probably fight the bear for me, too. I don't know. And but there was this moment where I realized, because of who's with us, I'm going to be okay. And I think this is really the opportunity that we have in Advent to stop and contemplate just the goodness of God and what it means that he would incarnate himself among us. That even though Jesus bodily ascended some 2,000 years ago, that he is still present with us today. For my family and I, the last 3 years really have been a season of a lot of fear. I stepped out of a job that was the only job I ever thought I would do at the end of 2018. And in 2019, my wife and I started this new company together. And I remember at the end of 2019, we had raised funds and we had hired, it's like a tech company, and we'd hired this development shop to build a product for us. And we got to the end of 2019 and the very beginning of 2020, and they were supposed to deliver, and the product was absolutely not what we had paid them for, and we had already paid them. We made all the mistakes you could possibly make, right? And so we get into 2019 or 2020, and the product's not what we thought it was going to be, and we were going to go raise some more funds based on it being what we had hoped it would be, and then it's not, and then COVID hits, and I remember when that happened thinking we're in so much trouble. We've spent all the money we raised. There's no way anybody's going to give us any more money. This isn't what it is supposed to be. And the last 2 years of our lives, quite frankly, have just been this incredible journey of seeing God provide in ways that we could have never anticipated. And God taking care of us and us realizing that he was with us in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of fear, realizing that he had never left us. And things have not worked out the way that we thought they would, and God did not provide in the ways that I would have preferred necessarily, but he has taught us so much through experiencing that fear and the uncertainty. And I just wonder if maybe for each and every one of us this year, as we've experienced a lot of fear and continue to experience more and more fear, if the opportunity of Advent isn't to simply ask ourselves, what is the one thing that I needed to know about God? Or the one thing that I needed to learn about God that I could never have learned without having been in this situation of fear? I think that's the opportunity that we have, is to stop and contemplate, what is the one thing that I could learn, or maybe have learned through being in this situation of fear? The second way that the coming of Jesus can shape us and mold us is that it can disarm our defensiveness. It can disarm our defensiveness. Luke, when he tells the story of the birth of Jesus, is the one that we most often read and remember, right? It's the Charlie Brown Christmas story, Christmas special with Linus on the stage. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. Mark and John, the other two of the other gospel writers, the other story of Jesus tellers, jump right into the life of Jesus pretty quickly. But Matthew does something different. He starts his telling of the story of Jesus by giving Jesus' full Ancestry.com lineage. Like he goes for 2 chapters, he just goes back through all of the family that led up to Jesus. And to be honest with you, every time I read that, or every time I think about that, I always dread it, because I'm like, man, like it would be horrible to like work your way through Matthew, because you've got these first 2 chapters of just like, and this person begat that person, and that's King James. But at any rate, this person was the father of this person, was the father of this person. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And Matthew is, what he's doing is he's trying to show that Jesus traces his roots back to David and back to Abraham. And that's an important thing. But I think one of the things that, I mean, just from a modern perspective, I'm sort of like, okay, bro, couldn't you have just said like, hey, Jesus is related to David and Abraham? It would have been a lot simpler if you would have just stuck to that. The question I've asked a lot is like, why does he spend so much time on these crazy lists of people? And I think perhaps the reason that he does that is because he wants us to understand something about Jesus' family that would otherwise maybe be glossed over or be easy to whitewash and forget. And that is that Jesus came from a really jacked up, horrible, messed up family. Like he had some real losers in his family, like just some really horrible people in his family. Abraham, the one that we're tracing all the way back to, was willing to sacrifice his own wife numerous times in order to save his own life. Jacob, a few generations closer to Jesus, was a swindling cheat. And the list could go on and on and on. I mean, there's just a ton of brokenness in Jesus' family history. And I think oftentimes in the Christmas season, we want to think about like the story of Jesus in these very like perfect and picturesque forms. We want to, put our nativity scene out and imagine that it really was this like beautiful, silent, perfect night. And there's value in thinking about the beauty of what was happening, but there's also value in recognizing the brokenness in which it was happening. And I don't know about you, but like there are times when, anybody do Christmas cards? Like you ever done, if you have kids and you do Christmas cards, you have experienced something that I have experienced, which is just utter and sheer frustration and a desire to just, I don't know, like put your kids in a room and leave them for a little while, right? Like there's like, if you've ever done Christmas cards, like it's this moment where you're trying to present this beautiful picture of your family, right? Like I just want for one, how long does it take to take a picture? Like a millisecond, right? Like I just need a millisecond of everybody looking at the daggone camera, smiling and acting like our life is perfect, okay? We're standing in front of this beautiful whatever behind us, and like one of the things that happened a few years ago was his family started posting like pictures of how crazy their family was on Christmas. Like it's like reality versus what we expect or whatever. And I love these pictures. We've got a couple of them here. So it's like Christmas 2014, right? Like why are we worried about this perfect picturesque thing? Let's just show what's really up here, right? Like, and I just love this. The next one, like. Ben Good is really, I just love the phonetic spelling there. North Polar bust. The kid is actually driving the car. I feel like, yes, this is my family, right? Like this is what it's really, really like. I think there's value for us in just dropping the defensiveness, dropping the desire to look like we've got everything together, and just stepping back and recognizing that Jesus came into a broken family, into a broken world, into the mess of our lives. Hebrews 12:18 says this. It says, that's why he had to enter into every detail of human life. Then, when he came before God as high priest to rid people of to get rid of the people's sins, he would have already experienced it all himself, all the pain, all the testing, and would be able to help where help was needed. And I wonder, what is the one thing that we could only learn through the brokenness that we are experiencing or have experienced or perhaps even caused ourselves? And if we were to stop and to contemplate that, what is the one thing that the coming of Jesus into our brokenness, into the mess that we've created in our lives, could teach us? I wonder if this third way that the coming of Jesus could shape us wouldn't just naturally be the overflow. And that is that Jesus' coming can empower us to love others. When we allow ourselves to be loved, when we allow ourselves, the mess and the brokenness of our lives to be known by Jesus, or just to own it before God, it then gives us the opportunity, having been loved, having been known, even in our brokenness, to then love others. 1 John 4:19, John goes on and he says, "We love because he first loved us." And I wonder, who is it that God is calling us to love, that maybe we are perfectly equipped to love because of the fear that we have experienced, because of the brokenness that we have experienced or caused? Who is it that God is calling us to love in this Advent season? That maybe we are ideally perfectly suited to be the one who demonstrates God's love to them, the coming of love to them. Let's pray. God, as we reflect on your coming for us, as we reflect on the things that cause us fear, the things that in our lives that are broken and that need healing and need restoration, as we reflect on the people in our lives, Lord, that maybe our experiences, our fear, our brokenness, make us the perfect person to extend your love to. I pray that we would know first and foremost that you do love us, that you have come into the world to demonstrate your love for us in the form of a little baby, vulnerable, that you loved us enough to move into our neighborhood. And I pray that no matter what it is that anyone in this room or watching on our live stream is going through, that you would just remind all of us, Lord, that you love us, that you know us, and that you've made a way for us to be with you through Jesus. And we thank you for that, God. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.